The needle trembled in Amber Mitchell's hand, her body shaking with need she despised. Rain hammered the Chicago alley, washing blood from a fresh cut on her temple, courtesy of her dealer, Vince, who'd gotten rough when she came up $40 short. She was 26 years old and felt ancient, hollowed out by 3 years of chasing the dragon that promised escape but delivered only chains. "Just one more," she whispered to the darkness, her voice cracking. "Just one more, then I'm done." But she'd said that yesterday, and the day before, and every day for the past 1,000 days. The alley stank of garbage and broken dreams, a fitting stage for her nightly ritual of self-destruction. Water soaked through her thin jacket, but she barely felt it anymore. The physical world had become distant, secondary to the chemical tyranny that ruled her blood. Her hands, once steady enough to braid her younger sister's hair, to write poetry in journals now long pawned, shook so violently she could barely find the vein. That's when the headlights cut through the rain. A black Mercedes Maybach, the kind that cost more than most Chicago houses, glided into the alley like a shark entering shallow water. Amber's survival instincts, dulled but not dead, screamed at her to run. Rich people didn't come to this part of Inglewood unless they were buying or hunting, and she was fresh out of anything worth selling except her body, something she'd sworn she'd never trade, the last line she refused to cross. The car stopped 15 feet away, engine purring with quiet menace. Tinted windows revealed nothing. Amber clutched the needle tighter, her drug-addled mind calculating escape routes. The fire escape to her left had a broken ladder. The street behind her led straight to Vince's corner, where his boys would finish what he'd started if she showed her face again without money. She was trapped. The driver's door opened first, and a man emerged. Tall, muscular, wearing a black suit that probably cost more than Amber had seen in her entire life. He opened the rear passenger door with military precision, his eyes scanning the alley with the practiced wariness of a bodyguard or a soldier. Then he stepped out. Kang Tae-hyun was 38 years old, though he wore his years like armor. Every experience, every scar, every ruthless decision carved into the granite of his features. His charcoal suit was custom-tailored, his shoes hand-stitched Italian leather, his watch a Patek Philippe that cost more than most people's yearly salary. But it wasn't his wealth that made Amber's breath catch. It was his eyes. Dark, bottomless, and absolutely focused on her with an intensity that made her feel naked despite her sodden clothes. For 25 years, Kang Tae-hyun had looked at women the way one might glance at furniture. Necessary, perhaps, but entirely uninteresting. His grandfather had arranged marriages. His business associates had offered daughters. Models, actresses, socialites had thrown themselves at his feet, drawn by his wealth and the dangerous aura that clung to him like expensive cologne. He'd felt nothing, not a flicker, not a spark, until now. Until this moment, standing in a garbage-strewn Chicago alley, looking at a black woman with cornrows coming undone, bruises blooming on her dark skin, a needle in her shaking hand, and eyes that held more life and fire than anyone he'd ever met, even as she was trying to kill herself slowly. "Get away from me," Amber said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I'm not working. Find someone else." Tae-hyun took a step forward, and his bodyguard, Dae-jung, who'd served him for 12 years, tensed, hand moving instinctively toward his concealed weapon. But Tae-hyun raised one finger, a gesture that froze Dae-jung in place. The rain plastered Tae-hyun's dark hair to his forehead as he moved closer, until only 6 feet separated them. "What's your name?" His accent was slight, his English perfect but flavored with soul. Amber laughed, the sound bitter and broken. "What's it to you? You gonna save me?" She held up the needle mockingly. "Knight in shining armor? I've heard that story before. It ends with me on my back and you getting what you paid for. I asked your name." His voice was quiet, but carried the weight of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Something in his tone, not the command, but the genuine curiosity beneath it, made Amber answer despite herself. "Amber. Amber Mitchell. Now you know who to send flowers to when I OD in this alley. You're not going to die here, Amber Mitchell." "Oh, really?" She took a defiant step forward, rage suddenly flooding through her veins hotter than any drug. "You got a crystal ball in that fancy car? You know my future? Because from where I'm standing, this," she gestured at the needle, at herself, at the whole wretched scene, "this is my future. This is all I got left." Taehyun did something then that shocked everyone present, including himself. He closed the distance between them and gently, so gently it made Amber's eyes sting with tears she refused to shed, took the needle from her hand. She could have fought him, should have, but something in his touch, controlled yet careful, stripped the fight from her. "No," he said simply, "this is your past. I'm offering you a different future." "Why?" The question came out as a whisper. Like this video if you believe everyone deserves a second chance. Subscribe to Love and Tension to see what happens when two broken people find each other in the darkness. Comment below, have you ever met someone who changed your life in a single moment? Taehyun looked at her for a long moment, rain streaming down his face, this woman who'd somehow reached inside his chest and restarted a heart he'd thought was dead. "Because 25 years ago, I decided I would feel nothing, and 30 seconds ago, you made me feel everything." The penthouse overlooked Lake Michigan like a throne room overlooking conquered territory. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed Chicago's glittering skyline, each light a life Amber had never touched, a world she'd only seen from the outside. Now she stood in the center of it, dripping rainwater onto marble floors that probably cost more than her entire education, feeling more out of place than she'd ever felt scoring drugs in hostile territory. Taehyun's penthouse was an exercise in controlled luxury. Modern furniture in blacks and grays, art that Amber suspected was both expensive and probably stolen, and technology embedded so seamlessly into the walls she could barely see it. Everything whispered power and money, but it was cold power, money that bought comfort but not warmth. The space felt like a museum, beautiful and utterly impersonal. "Daejong will show you to a guest room," Taehyun said, shrugging off his wet jacket. Underneath, his shirt clung to a frame that suggested violence was as familiar to him as breathing. "There are clothes in the closet. Shower, eat, we'll talk in the morning." Amber's street instincts screamed warnings. Nothing came free, especially not rescue from a stranger in a $100,000 car. "What's the price?" Taehyun paused, his back to her. "Price? For all this?" Amber gestured at the penthouse, at him, at the impossible situation. "Rich men don't pull drug addicts out of alleys unless they want something. So what is it? You got some weird fetish? You want me to run drugs for you? Be your ghetto trophy?" He turned slowly, and the look on his face was so devoid of judgment, so genuinely curious, that it disarmed her more than any denial could have. "I want you to not die in an alley, that's all. Tonight at least. Tomorrow might cost something. We'll negotiate then." There was humor in his voice, dark and dry, and Amber found herself almost smiling despite the withdrawal already beginning to claw at her nerves. "You're either the weirdest John I've ever met, or you're actually serious." "I'm always serious." Daejong stepped forward, his face impassive, but his eyes sharp, cataloging every micro-expression Amber made. "Ms. Mitchell, if you'll follow me." The guest room was bigger than every apartment Amber had lived in combined. King-sized bed with Egyptian cotton sheets, bathroom with a soaking tub and a shower that had more settings than her old TV. The closet held women's clothes in her size, which should have been creepy, but somehow wasn't, because they were practical clothes, not lingerie or clubwear. Jeans, sweaters, sneakers, clothes for living, not for display. Amber stood in the shower for 40 minutes, letting water hot enough to hurt wash away layers of street grime, rain, blood, and shame. The withdrawal was building. Sweats, chills, nausea churning in her gut. By morning, she'd be shaking badly. By tomorrow night, she'd be desperate enough to rob this place and run back to Vince's corner. But for now, for this moment, she was clean. When she emerged, wrapped in a robe that cost more than her former rent, she found a tray of food waiting. Not fancy, just rice, grilled chicken, steamed vegetables, and water. Simple food that her roiling stomach might actually keep down. There was also a note in precise handwriting. "The door isn't locked. You can leave whenever you want." Amber stared at that note for a long time, her mind trying to find the trap, the angle, the hustle. But her body, exhausted and beginning its chemical rebellion, made the decision for her. She ate 3 bites, kept 2 down, and collapsed into sheets that felt like clouds. She dreamed of needles and alleys and eyes that looked at her like they mattered. Morning came with the violence of withdrawal. Amber woke to her body staging a full revolt, sweating, shaking, her stomach heaving even though it was empty. She barely made it to the bathroom before throwing up bile and regret. Her skin crawled like insects were racing beneath the surface. Every nerve screamed for the relief only chemicals could provide. She was curled on the cool tile floor, praying for death or drugs, whichever came first, when the door opened. "Withdrawal?" Taehyun's voice was neutral, clinical. Amber wanted to tell him to go to hell, but she was too busy dry heaving. She heard him move, felt him crouch beside her, and then something cold pressed against her forehead, a damp cloth. "I've seen this before," he said quietly. "Many times. It gets worse before it gets better." "Then let me go," Amber gasped between spasms. "Let me go score. I'll come back. I swear I'll—" "No, you won't, and I won't let you." Anger gave her strength. She looked up at him, vision blurring, and spat, "You don't own me. You can't keep me here." "I'm not keeping you. The door's unlocked, remember?" His dark eyes held hers. "But I'm asking you to stay, just for today. Fight it for 1 day. Why do you care?" The question came out as a sob. Taehyun was silent for a long moment, the damp cloth moving gently across her forehead. Finally, "My mother was an addict. Heroin. She died when I was 7, needle still in her arm. I found her." Amber stared at him, the brutal honesty of his confession cutting through the fog of her suffering. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be alive tomorrow. That's all I'm asking." He helped her back to bed, brought her water and plain crackers, and then did something that shocked her more than anything else. He sat in a chair by the window and opened a laptop, working silently while she writhed through the worst of the morning withdrawals. He didn't leave, didn't judge, just stayed. Hours blurred together. Amber drifted in and out of fevered consciousness, her body purging poison while her mind screamed for it back. Every time she woke, Taehyun was there. Sometimes working, sometimes just watching the city. Once she woke to find him speaking rapid Korean on the phone, his voice dropping into tones that made her instinctively afraid. This was the voice of a man who gave orders that weren't questioned. By late afternoon, the worst had passed, leaving Amber weak but clear-headed. She lay staring at the ceiling, feeling scraped raw but somehow lighter. It was the first time in 3 years she'd gone 12 hours without using. "There's a doctor coming tonight," Taehyun said without looking away from his laptop. "He specializes in addiction medicine. He'll evaluate you, prescribe things to help with the withdrawal. Not opiates, other medications, legitimate ones." "I don't have insurance. I can't pay." "I'm paying." His tone left no room for argument. Amber's pride warred with her desperation and lost. "Why are you doing this? And don't give me that cryptic line from last night. Real answer." Taehyun finally looked at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "Because I spent 25 years believing I was incapable of feeling anything real. I built an empire on that emptiness, and then I saw you in that alley, fighting to destroy yourself, and I felt everything at once. Anger, fear, hope, desire, protectiveness. You made me human again in 30 seconds. I'm paying that debt." "That's insane," Amber whispered. "Yes," he smiled then, a slight curve of his lips that transformed his face from granite to something almost vulnerable. "Welcome to my world." The doctor arrived at 8 p.m., an older Korean man named Dr. Hwang, who examined Amber with brisk efficiency and zero judgment. He prescribed medications, outlined a treatment plan, and spoke to her like she was a person, not a problem. When he left, he squeezed her shoulder gently and said, "You're stronger than your addiction. Remember that." That night, Amber managed to eat a full meal. Taehyun joined her at the dining table, an enormous slab of reclaimed wood that could seat 12 but held only 2, and they ate in companionable silence. But as the meal ended, Amber's street-smart brain finally started processing the clues she'd been too sick to catalog. The bodyguard who moved like special forces, the phone conversations in Korean where words like shipment and territory came through even in translation, the way Taehyun held himself, coiled violence wrapped in expensive clothes, the penthouse that was too secure, too isolated, too much like a fortress. "You're not a regular businessman, are you?" Taehyun set down his chopsticks with precise control. "No. Drug dealer?" Among other things. Amber absorbed this, her mind working through implications. She should be horrified, should run, but she'd grown up in Inglewood, where dealers were neighbors, where survival meant understanding the difference between bad and worse, and something in her gut said that Taehyun, for all his danger, wasn't the worst kind. "So, you run drugs and I was using them. That's ironic." "The word you're looking for is hypocritical." His voice was flat. "I've made billions poisoning people like you. I'm responsible for thousands of deaths I'll never see, addiction I'll never answer for. I'm not a good man, Amber. Don't mistake my interest in your survival for virtue." The brutal honesty should have scared her. Instead, it made her trust him more. "At least you're honest about being a monster." "Is that what I am?" Amber studied him across the table, this man who'd sat with her through withdrawal, who spoke of his dead mother, who looked at her like she was precious despite barely knowing her. "I don't know what you are, but Vince, my dealer, he beat me for $40. You saved me and asked for nothing, so maybe you're a monster, but you're not my monster." Something shifted in Taehyun's expression, a crack in the granite. "I want to show you something. Tomorrow, if you're strong enough." "Show me what?" "The truth of who I am, what I do. You should know what you're accepting by staying here." Amber's heart hammered, but she nodded. She'd spent 3 years running from truth. Maybe it was time to face some. The next morning, Amber woke feeling almost human. The medications Dr. Hwang had prescribed took the edge off her cravings without replacing them, letting her think clearly for the first time in years. She dressed in the clothes Taehyun had provided, dark jeans, a soft gray sweater, boots that actually fit, and found him waiting in the living room. He looked different today. Still dangerously handsome, still precisely dressed, but there was tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. Ready? For what? To see the monster's lair. They took the Maybach, Daejong driving in silence while Amber watched Chicago scroll past the tinted windows. They headed south, deeper into industrial territory, where warehouses hulked like sleeping giants. Finally, they stopped at a building that looked abandoned, broken windows, graffiti-scarred walls, no signs of life. But when Taehyun led her inside, it was like entering another world. The warehouse interior was pristine, white walls, industrial lighting, and row upon row of tables where workers in sterile suits packaged white powder into smaller bags. Amber's stomach dropped. This wasn't some small-time operation. This was industrial-scale drug production. Millions of dollars of heroin and cocaine being processed for distribution across Chicago and beyond. "This is one of 3 facilities I run in Chicago," Taehyun said quietly. "My organization supplies 80% of the south side and 40% of the west side. That powder you see, some of it might have ended up in your veins." Amber felt sick, but she forced herself to look, to really see. The workers were efficient, professional, and, she noticed, protected. Safety equipment, ventilation systems, even what looked like healthcare stations. "Your workers. You treat them well. I'm a criminal, not a sadist. They're paid fair wages, have health care, and their families are protected. No one works for me under duress." "How noble," Amber said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "You're poisoning my community, but at least you treat your poisoners well." Tae-hyun didn't flinch. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. Do you want to leave now? Walk away? I'll have Dae-jung drive you anywhere you want to go, give you money to start over somewhere else." Amber turned to face him, this impossible man who'd saved her and now showed her the empire built on destroying people like her. The smart move was to run, to take his money and disappear. But 3 years on the street had taught her that purely smart moves were a luxury. Sometimes you had to make pragmatic ones. "If I leave, I'm dead in a week," she said bluntly. "Vince won't forget I owe him, and even if I run to another city, I'm still an addict with no job, no skills, no support. I'll be back in an alley with a needle in a month tops." "Yes," Tae-hyun agreed. "Probably. So you're offering me what, exactly? A spot in your drug empire? You want me to sell the poison you cook?" "No." He stepped closer, and Amber's pulse jumped. "I want you to help me be better than what I am. Stay with me. Get clean. Let me help you build a life. And in return, remind me that the people I'm poisoning are real, that they matter. Be my conscience, Amber, because I lost mine 20 years ago." It was insane. Completely insane. She barely knew this man, and what she did know was terrifying. He was a drug lord, probably a killer, definitely a criminal, but he'd also sat with her through withdrawal, looked at her like she was precious, and offered her something no one else ever had, a genuine choice. "I'm not going to be your trophy," Amber said firmly, "or your pet project, or some reformed addict you show off to feel better about yourself. I know, and I'm not sleeping with you just because you're helping me. I know that too. Then what am I? What is this?" Tae-hyun was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. "Honestly, I don't know. I've never felt like this before. But I know that losing you would hurt, and I haven't cared about losing anything in decades. So stay. Figure it out with me." Amber thought about the alley, the needle, the slow death she'd been courting. Then she thought about yesterday, fighting through withdrawal with someone who cared enough to stay. The choice wasn't even really a choice. "Okay," she said quietly, "I'll stay. For now. But I need something from you. Name it. Teach me about your world, not just the drugs, everything. How it works, who's involved, what the rules are. I spent 3 years swimming in this world from the bottom. I want to understand it from the top." Tae-hyun's smile was slow and genuine, transforming his face into something almost beautiful. "Deal." Before we continue, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Love and Tension for more stories that challenge what we think we know about good and evil, love and survival. Comment below. Could you accept help from someone who profits from pain? Where do you draw the line? The next 2 weeks unfolded in a strange rhythm. Mornings, Amber met with Dr. Huang, who monitored her recovery and adjusted her medications. Afternoons, she explored the penthouse, slowly making it feel less like a museum and more like a space she inhabited. Evenings, Tae-hyun educated her. He was a surprisingly good teacher, patient, thorough, and brutally honest. He explained the structure of his organization, 3 main operations across Chicago, with distribution networks reaching into 6 other cities. He imported product from Southeast Asia through a complicated network of corrupt port officials and diplomatic channels. His operation was efficient, relatively non-violent compared to rivals, and ruthlessly profitable. "Why Chicago?" Amber asked one night, curled on the couch while Tae-hyun explained territory divisions on a digital map. "Because Chicago is hungry, segregated, struggling, with entire neighborhoods forgotten by government and society. People need escape, and I provide it. It's evil, yes, but it's also supply and demand." "You sound like you're describing a regular business." "Drugs are a regular business. They're just illegal." He looked at her then, his expression unreadable. "Does this bother you, knowing what I do?" Amber considered lying, but they'd built their strange relationship on brutal honesty. Yes, but not as much as it should, and that bothers me more. I should hate you. You're part of what destroyed me, but you're also the reason I'm alive and getting clean. Cognitive dissonance. The human mind hates contradictions. Is that what you are? A contradiction? I'm Korean, Taehyun said with a slight smile. We invented contradictions. Ancient culture and K-pop, Confucian values and plastic surgery capital of the world. And me, a man who kills people and saves you. It's very Korean, actually. Amber laughed, surprising herself. How did you end up here, in Chicago, running drugs? Taehyun's smile faded from his face. He was quiet for so long Amber thought he wouldn't answer. Then, my grandfather was Yakuza in Seoul, Japanese mob. My father broke away, tried to go legitimate, and was killed for it when I was 13. My mother was already dead from drugs. I was sent to an uncle in New York who ran numbers for the Italian families. I learned the business young. By 20, I was running my own territory. By 25, I'd built enough capital to go independent. By 30, I had Chicago. And women? The whole ignoring women for 25 years thing? Taehyun's expression became almost vulnerable. I was engaged once. I was 19. She was beautiful, kind, daughter of my uncle's business partner. I thought I loved her. Then I found out she was DEA, deep undercover, getting close to map my uncle's organization. When the raids came, she looked me in the eye and told me I was just a job. After that, I shrugged. I decided feeling nothing was safer. Until you, he met her eyes. In an alley, destroying yourself, and still more alive than anyone I'd met in decades. The air between them thickened, charged with something Amber wasn't ready to name. She broke the moment by standing. I should sleep. Dr. Huang says rest is important. Amber, Taehyun's voice stopped her. You don't have to be afraid of me. I'm not afraid of you, she said honestly. I'm afraid of what I'm starting to feel about you. Because this, she gestured between them, this is insane. I'm a recovering addict you pulled from an alley 2 weeks ago. You're a drug lord who's killed people. We shouldn't work. But we do. Yeah, Amber whispered. We do. That's the scary part. 3 weeks into her new life, Amber was doing something she hadn't done in 3 years. She was reading. Taehyun's penthouse had a library she'd initially assumed was for show, but when she'd mentioned liking books, he'd surprised her by recommending titles. Now she sat curled in a leather chair by the window, sunlight streaming across pages, her mind sharp and engaged in a way it hadn't been since before the drugs. The cravings still came. Daily, sometimes hourly, her body still remembered the false paradise of heroin, still whispered that just one more hit would be fine. She had it under control now, but Dr. Huang's medications helped, and more importantly, she had something the drugs had stolen, a reason to stay clean. You look thoughtful. Taehyun's voice pulled her from her book. He'd been in meetings all day, his face showing the strain of running a criminal empire, but his eyes softened when they landed on her. I was thinking about purpose, Amber said, setting the book aside. 3 years ago, I was in community college, studying social work. I wanted to help people in neighborhoods like mine. Then my mom died, my boyfriend left, and I fell apart. The drugs were supposed to help me cope. Instead, they took everything, my purpose, my future, me. And now? Now I'm clean, living with a drug lord, and I have no idea what my purpose is supposed to be. It's weird. Taehyun sat across from her, his movements controlled and precise as always. What if your purpose is exactly what you think it is? What do you mean? You wanted to help people in your community. That hasn't changed. The only difference is now you understand the system from both sides, the bottom where you were and the top where I operate. That's valuable knowledge. Amber stared at him. Are you suggesting what? Become some kind of social worker for drug addicts while dating a drug dealer? That's hypocritical at best. No, I'm suggesting you be exactly who you are, someone who survived, who understands, and who gives a damn, however that looks. Before Amber could respond, Dae-jung appeared in the doorway, his face grim. "Boss, we have a situation." Tae-hyun's entire demeanor changed, shoulders squaring, eyes hardening, the businessman mask sliding into place. "How bad?" "Ronaldo's crew hit one of our distribution points on the west side. 3 dead, $500,000 in product gone." Amber watched Tae-hyun's jaw clench, saw the violence coil in his frame like a spring compressed to breaking. "Call the council. We meet in an hour." "Boss," Dae-jung hesitated, "this requires retaliation. Ronaldo disrespected." "I know what it requires." Tae-hyun's voice was ice. 1 hour. "And Dae-jung, Amber comes with us." Dae-jung's eyes widened fractionally, his version of shock. "Boss, the council will deal with it. Amber comes." After Dae-jung left, Amber stood slowly. "What just happened?" "Ronaldo Santiago runs a rival operation, primarily cocaine, some meth. We've had an uneasy peace for 3 years, each controlling our territories. He just broke that peace. And you're taking me to, what, a mob meeting?" "A council of the major operators in Chicago. We meet quarterly to maintain peace, divide territories, settle disputes. Today's meeting won't be peaceful." Tae-hyun looked at her steadily. "You wanted to understand my world. This is it. The violence, the rules, the code. You should see it." Amber's heart hammered. Every instinct screamed this was dangerous, that she should stay hidden in the penthouse. But she'd asked for this, to understand, to see the truth. "Okay, I'm ready." "No, you're not." Tae-hyun's voice was gentle. "But you're brave enough to come anyway. That's what matters." The council met in a private room at a restaurant in Greektown, neutral territory, ostensibly owned by a legitimate businessman, but actually a front for money laundering. Amber walked between Tae-hyun and Dae-jung, feeling eyes track her every movement. The other operators brought security too, men with hard faces and dangerous eyes, all wondering who she was and why she was here. The room itself was elegant. Dark wood, soft lighting, a long table that could seat 15. 4 men were already present when they arrived, each representing a major criminal operation in Chicago. Tae-hyun had briefed her on the drive over. Luca Calabrese ran the Italian heroin operation on the north side. Viktor Sokolov controlled meth production and distribution across several suburbs. Jamal Rivers managed cocaine and pills in the south side projects. And Reynaldo Santiago, younger, flashier, more violent, ran a growing cocaine empire that was encroaching on everyone's territory. "Tae-hyun," Luca said by way of greeting. His eyes flicked to Amber. "You bring your girlfriend to business?" "Amber is here as my guest and under my protection," Tae-hyun said calmly, pulling out a chair for her. "Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me." The room went silent. In this world, those words were a declaration of war if challenged. But no one challenged. Tae-hyun's reputation preceded him, ruthlessly efficient, brutally violent when necessary, and absolutely loyal to those under his protection. Reynaldo arrived last, swaggering in with 2 bodyguards like he owned the place. He was 32, handsome in a dangerous way, with gold chains and expensive streetwear that screamed new money. His eyes landed on Amber and lingered inappropriately long. "Damn, Tae-hyun, didn't know you had it in you to finally get some. She's fine." Reynaldo's voice was mocking, deliberately disrespectful. Amber felt Tae-hyun tense beside her, but before he could respond, she spoke. "I'm Amber Mitchell, and you must be the idiot who started a war today." The room went dead silent. Reynaldo's smile froze. Victor laughed, a sharp bark of surprise. Even Luca looked impressed. "Careful, little girl," Reynaldo said, his voice dropping into threat. "You don't know who you're talking to." "I know exactly who I'm talking to." Amber kept her voice steady despite her hammering heart. A small-time dealer trying to look big by hitting someone else's operation. Classic overcompensation. Reynaldo lunged forward, but his bodyguards grabbed him. Taeyun hadn't moved, but Daejung had somehow materialized between Reynaldo and Amber, his hand inside his jacket where a gun certainly waited. Enough. Luca's voice cut through the tension. We're here to discuss peace, not start a shootout. Reynaldo, sit. Taeyun, control your woman. She doesn't need controlling, Taeyun said mildly. She's stating facts. The meeting proceeded with tense negotiation. Reynaldo claimed the hit was retaliation for Taeyun's crew selling in disputed territory. Taeyun provided proof, dates, times, witnesses that his crew had stayed within agreed boundaries. The council, after bitter debate, sided with Taeyun. Reynaldo owed reparations, replacement product, and cash for the dead men's families. Reynaldo's face darkened with rage. This isn't over. It is, Luca said flatly, unless you want war with all of us. The council has spoken. They left under heavy tension. Taeyun's hand warm on Amber's back as they walked to the car. Once inside, Daejung driving fast toward safety, Taeyun finally spoke. That was incredibly dangerous and incredibly stupid. Amber exhaled shakily. I know, but he was disrespecting you, and you defended me. Taeyun's voice held wonder. No one's done that in 15 years. Well, someone should. You're not as scary as you think. I'm exactly as scary as I think, but apparently not to you. He touched her face gently, thumb brushing her cheek. You're remarkable, Amber Mitchell. The moment stretched between them, charged and dangerous in a completely different way than the meeting had been. Amber's breath caught. For weeks they'd circled this attraction, both recognizing it, neither acting on it. But now, in the close confines of the car, with adrenaline still singing through her veins, Taeyun, she whispered, what are we doing? I don't know, but I don't want to stop. Their first kiss was soft, tentative, completely at odds with the violence that surrounded their lives. Taeyun's lips were gentle against hers, his hand cupping her face like she was something precious. Amber melted into it, her hands finding his shoulders, solid and strong beneath expensive fabric. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Taeyun rested his forehead against hers. I've waited 25 years to feel this. I'm not letting you go. Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. The next month was a masterclass in contrasts. By day, Amber attended therapy sessions Dr. Huang recommended, working through the trauma that had led her to drugs in the first place. By night, she learned the intricacies of Taeyun's empire, not to participate, but to understand the man she was falling for. They became partners in the truest sense. Taeyun sought her input on decisions, valuing her street-level perspective. When he planned a new distribution strategy, Amber pointed out the flaws from an addict's viewpoint, where people actually scored, how they moved, what they needed. Her insights made his operation more efficient, which should have bothered her more than it did. I'm helping you sell drugs better, she said one night, the guilt finally catching up. I'm making it easier for you to destroy people like I was. Taeyun set down the papers he'd been reviewing. You're not wrong, but consider this. I'm going to sell drugs regardless. I've built an empire that doesn't collapse just because I feel guilty, but with your help, I can make it less destructive. Cleaner product, fewer overdoses, better treatment for my street dealers so they're not as desperate or violent. Is that perfect? No, but it's better than it was. That's the rationalization of someone who wants to feel good about doing evil. Yes, it is. I'm a criminal, Amber. I've made peace with that. The question is, can you? It was the central tension of their relationship, the thing they kept circling but never resolving. Amber was falling in love with a man who profited from poison. Taeyun had already fallen, completely and irrevocably, for a woman who represented everything his empire destroyed. But despite the moral complexity, they worked. Taeyun was patient with her recovery, understanding when she had bad days where the craving screamed. Amber brought warmth to his cold world, making the penthouse feel like a home instead of a fortress. They talked for hours, about everything and nothing. He taught her Korean phrases, she introduced him to soul food, dragging him to a restaurant in Bronzeville where he was the only Asian face in the crowd and completely at ease. "You're different with me," Amber observed one night, watching him laugh at something she'd said. Genuine laughter, unguarded and real. "I'm who I actually am with you. Everyone else gets the version that keeps them afraid or obedient. You get me. That's a lot of trust for someone you've known 2 months. I knew in 30 seconds in that alley that you were different. The rest is just confirmation." But their bubble of happiness couldn't last forever. Trouble arrived on a rainy night. Fitting, since rain had brought them together, in the form of Dae-Young bursting into the penthouse with blood on his sleeve. "Boss," he gasped, "it's Ronaldo. He took the shipment. All of it. 10 million in product. Gone." Tae-Yun went absolutely still, and Amber saw the transformation from the man who laughed with her to the criminal kingpin who ruled through fear and violence. How many dead? 6 of ours. He left a message, says if you want your product back, you meet him alone. Pier 47, midnight. "It's a trap," Amber said immediately. "Obviously a trap. You can't go." "I have to." Tae-Yun's voice was flat, emotionless. "If I don't, I look weak. Other operators will smell blood. My empire will tear apart from inside." "Then don't go alone. Take your whole crew, turn it into a war, and lose dozens of men, maybe start a full gang war that gets federal attention?" Tae-Yun shook his head. "No, I meet him, negotiate, or eliminate the threat and end this quietly." Amber grabbed his arm. "He'll kill you." "Probably he'll try." Tae-Yun's smile was cold. "But I'm very hard to kill." "Tae-Yun, please." He pulled her close, kissing her fiercely. "I've lived 40 years in darkness. 2 months with you have been worth all of them. If tonight goes wrong, know that you gave me something I thought was impossible. You made me feel human again. Don't you dare say goodbye to me." Amber's voice broke. "Don't you dare go to your death after making me fall in love with you." Tae-Yun went very still. "Say that again?" "I love you, you idiot. I love you despite every reason I shouldn't, and you don't get to die now." He kissed her again, softer this time, pouring everything he felt into it. "I love you too, and I'm not planning to die. But if something happens, nothing's happening because I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. You can't stop me. I'll follow in another car if I have to, but I'm not letting you walk into a trap alone." Amber's voice was steel. "We're partners, remember? That means I stand with you, even in the stupid, dangerous parts." Tae-Yun looked at Dae-Young, who shrugged. "Boss, she's as stubborn as you, and she's not wrong. Extra eyes might help." "If you come," Tae-Yun said slowly, "you stay in the car, behind bulletproof glass. Dae-Young guards you while I handle Ronaldo. Deal." Pier 47 was abandoned. Rusted shipping containers, broken concrete, the smell of Lake Michigan mixing with industrial decay. Tae-Yun's car pulled up at 11:55 p.m., headlights cutting through darkness. Ronaldo's crew was already there, a dozen men at least, all armed, forming a semicircle around their boss. "This is bad," Dae-Young muttered. "He's got numbers." "He's also scared," Tae-Yun said calmly. "Otherwise, he wouldn't need so many guns. Stay with Amber. I'll handle this." Amber watched him walk into danger, every muscle in her body screaming to run after him. But she'd promised, so she stayed, hands clenched, watching through the windshield as Tae-Hyun approached Ronaldo alone. "You came," Ronaldo called out. "Didn't think you had the balls. You took something of mine. I'm here to collect." "See, that's the problem." Ronaldo circled Tae-Hyun like a shark. "You think you run this city, but times are changing, old man. There's a new generation coming up, and we don't bow to Korean gangsters who forget their place." "My place is at the top," Tae-Hyun said flatly. "Your place is 6 feet under if you don't return my property." Ronaldo laughed. "You gonna kill me? Here? In front of all my boys? Even you're not that crazy." "No," Tae-hyun agreed. "I'm not going to kill you here." He moved faster than Amber's eyes could track, one moment standing calmly, the next a blur of violence. His fist connected with Ronaldo's jaw with a crack that echoed across the pier. Ronaldo went down hard, and chaos erupted. Guns came out. Tae-hyun dove behind a shipping container as bullets flew. Dae-jung cursed and threw the car into reverse, tires screaming as he maneuvered to give Tae-hyun cover. Amber watched in horror as the man she loved engaged in a firefight, outgunned and outmanned. "We have to help him," she gasped. "Boss gave orders." "Screw orders." Amber was already opening the door. "Miss Mitchell, don't!" But she was out, running low across the pier. Years of surviving Chicago streets had taught her how to move unseen, how to use darkness and shadow. She circled wide, behind the shipping containers, until she was behind Ronaldo's men. She saw it then. Ronaldo, blood pouring from his broken jaw, pulling a gun from his ankle holster and aiming at Tae-hyun's exposed back. Time slowed. Amber didn't think. She grabbed a rusted pipe from the ground and charged, bringing it down on Ronaldo's wrist with all her strength. The gun went flying. Ronaldo screamed, and then Tae-hyun was there, having heard the commotion, his face transforming from warrior to absolute terror when he saw Amber. "What are you doing?" "Saving your life." She kicked Ronaldo's gun away. "You're welcome." The tide turned then. Dae-jung and the backup crew Tae-hyun had secretly positioned around the perimeter moved in, surrounding Ronaldo's men. The gunfire stopped. In the sudden silence, Ronaldo looked up at Tae-hyun with hate and fear warring in his eyes. "You broke the rules," Tae-hyun said quietly. "Came at me during peace, killed my men, stole from me. The council would sanction your execution." "So do it," Ronaldo spat blood. "Kill me." Tae-hyun looked at Amber, this woman who'd charged into danger to save him, who loved him despite everything he was. "No, that's the old way. I'm trying something new." He pulled Ronaldo up roughly. "You're done in Chicago. Gone by morning. Leave your territory, your operation, everything. Disappear and I let you live. Stay and I'll make sure your death takes days." "You're weak," Ronaldo snarled. "She's made you weak." "No," Tae-hyun said, glancing at Amber. "She's made me better. There's a difference." They left Ronaldo bleeding on the pier, his empire already crumbling. In the car, Tae-hyun pulled Amber against him, his hands shaking, the first time she'd ever seen him show fear. "You could have died," he whispered into her hair. "So could you." Amber pulled back to look at him. "We're in this together, remember? I'm not going to stand by and watch you die." "You're impossible." "You're impossible. I'm just keeping up." He kissed her then, fierce and desperate, and Amber kissed him back, both of them alive and together despite the violence that surrounded them. 3 months after the pier incident, Amber stood in front of a mirror, barely recognizing herself. She'd gained weight. Healthy weight, her cheeks fuller, her eyes bright instead of hollow. Her cornrows were freshly done, her skin clear. She wore a simple dress, nothing fancy, but she looked alive in a way she hadn't in years. Today was important. Today she was meeting with community leaders from Englewood to propose something that had been growing in her mind for weeks. Tae-hyun had offered to come, but she'd refused. "This is mine," she'd said. "I need to do it myself." So he'd stayed home, though he knew he'd have security watching from a distance. It was his way, letting her be independent while ensuring she stayed safe. She'd learned to accept it as the compromise of loving a man who dealt in violence. The community center was the same one where she'd attended NA meetings before falling off the wagon years ago. Walking in felt like confronting a ghost, the person she'd been, the person she'd almost died becoming, but she wasn't that person anymore. 5 leaders sat around a table, Pastor Williams, who ran the youth programs, Shanice, who managed social services, Terrell, a former gang member turned activist, and 2 others Amber didn't know. They looked skeptical as she sat down. "Thank you for meeting me," Amber began, her voice steady. "My name is Amber Mitchell. 3 years ago, I was a student studying social work. Then I became an addict. 6 months ago, I was dying in an alley. Today, I'm clean and want to give back to the community that raised me. Pastor Williams leaned forward. "We know your story, Amber. We also know who you're living with. Kang Tae-hyun is poison to this community." "Yes," Amber agreed simply. "He is. His organization has destroyed countless lives, including almost mine. I'm not here to defend him or make excuses. I'm here to propose something that might save people despite him." She laid out her plan. A program funded by her personally, money Tae-hyun had given her, though she didn't mention that, to provide support for addicts who wanted to get clean. Not just NA meetings, but real resources, medical care, job training, housing assistance, therapy, everything she'd needed and never had access to until Tae-hyun. "Why should we trust you?" Shanice asked bluntly. "You're sleeping with the enemy." "You shouldn't trust me," Amber said, "but you should trust the program. Every dollar will be accounted for. Every resource will go directly to people who need it. And yes, I'm with Tae-hyun, but I'm not him. I'm someone who survived, who knows both sides of this hell, and who refuses to let more people die just because the system failed them like it failed me." The meeting lasted 2 hours. They grilled her, questioned everything, demanded proof and assurances. By the end, Amber was exhausted, but exhilarated. Pastor Williams stood first, extending his hand. "We'll work with you, tentatively, but we're watching, Amber. You stumble, you're done." "Fair enough." She returned to the penthouse that evening to find Tae-hyun waiting, a smile playing at his lips. "How did it go?" "They said yes, I'm starting my program." Amber threw her arms around him. "I'm actually doing something good." "You've always done something good," Tae-hyun said softly. "You saved me first." Over the next weeks, Amber threw herself into building the program. She met with addicts, connected them with resources, sat with them through withdrawal like Tae-hyun had sat with her. Every person she helped felt like redemption, not for Tae-hyun's sins, but for her own perceived failures. And slowly, she began to change his world, too. "Why don't you cut the product less?" she asked one night, reviewing his business reports. "You're adding so many fillers that people overdose because they don't know the strength." "More profit," Tae-hyun said simply. "And more deaths, which brings more heat, which threatens your empire. Cut it less, charge slightly more, market it as the premium dealer. You'll lose some volume, but gain reputation as the safe dealer. In a sick way, that's worth something." Tae-hyun stared at her. "That's actually brilliant. I know your world now. I can help you be evil more efficiently, or we can find ways to make your evil slightly less destructive. Your choice." He chose the second option. Slowly, incrementally, Tae-hyun's operation became less lethal. Not good, it would never be good, but measurably better. Fewer overdoses, better treatment for street dealers, even funding through anonymous donations for the very programs Amber ran. It was hypocritical and complicated and morally gray, and Amber made peace with it because the alternative was watching from the sidelines while people died. She couldn't change Tae-hyun's fundamental nature, but she could influence the margins, and in those margins, lives were saved. 6 months after the alley, Amber received a call that changed everything. It was her younger sister, Jasmine, who she hadn't spoken to in 3 years. "Amber, is this really you?" "Jazz?" Amber's voice broke. "Oh God, Jazz, I'm so sorry. I thought you were dead. Everyone said you were dead." Jasmine was crying. "Where have you been?" They met the next day at a cafe in Hyde Park, neutral ground, away from Amber's old haunts and Tae-hyun's world. Jasmine was 22 now, working as a nurse, living the life Amber should have had. When she saw Amber, healthy, clean, alive, she burst into tears. "I prayed for you every day," Jasmine sobbed, hugging her sister tight. "Every single day. I'm sorry I disappeared. I'm sorry I chose drugs over you. You chose survival. I understand that now." Jasmine pulled back, studying Amber's face. "How did you get clean?" Amber hesitated, then decided on truth. "Someone helped me. someone complicated. She told Jasmine everything. The alley, Tae-hyun, the withdrawal, the moral complexity of loving a criminal. Jasmine listened without interruption, her nurse's training making her face unreadable. "Do you love him?" Jasmine finally asked. "Yes, completely. And he's really a drug dealer? Not just selling weed, but serious drugs." "Yes, he runs a multi-million-dollar operation. He's responsible for deaths, addiction, all of it." Jasmine was quiet for a long moment. "But he saved you. He saved me." "Then I won't judge. But Amber, you can't save him. You know that, right? He is who he is." "I know. I'm not trying to save him. I'm just trying to love him while saving myself." That night, Amber brought Jasmine to meet Tae-hyun. He was nervous, the first time Amber had ever seen him uncertain. He'd faced down rival gang leaders with ice in his veins, but meeting his girlfriend's sister terrified him. "You must be Tae-hyun," Jasmine said coolly, "the man who profits from destroying people like my sister." "Yes," Tae-hyun said simply, "I am exactly that person. And yet you saved her when everyone else left her to die. I was selfish. I saved her because losing her would have hurt me." Jasmine studied him for a long moment, then smiled slightly. "At least you're honest. That's more than most men manage." She turned to Amber. "He'll do, for now." It was the closest thing to approval Amber could have hoped for, and it filled her with warmth. Her sister was back in her life. She had Tae-hyun. She had her program helping others. Life wasn't perfect. It was morally complicated and built on contradictions, but it was hers, and she was thriving. The call came on a Tuesday night. Tae-hyun answered his phone, listened for 30 seconds, and his face went absolutely blank, the expression he wore when processing something catastrophic. "I understand. I'm on my way." He hung up and looked at Amber. "That was the FBI. They're offering me a deal." Amber's blood went cold. "What kind of deal?" "Immunity and witness protection in exchange for testimony against the other Chicago operators. They've been building a RICO case for 2 years. They have me, but they want the whole network." He sat heavily, looking more tired than she'd ever seen him. "If I take the deal, I walk away free. New identity, new life, away from all of this. And if you don't? 25 years minimum, probably life." The world tilted. Amber sat beside him, her mind racing. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." Tae-hyun looked at her, his dark eyes full of emotion. "If I take the deal, I have to disappear. New name, new city, no contact with anyone from my old life. That includes you." "What?" The word came out as a gasp. "Witness protection means cutting all ties. You couldn't come with me. You're not implicated in anything. And I won't ask you to abandon your sister, your program, your life to run with a criminal." Amber felt like she was drowning. "So those are the options? You testify and I lose you? Or you go to prison and I still lose you?" "There's a third option." Tae-hyun took her hands. "I run. Disappear without the FBI's help. I have resources, connections. I could vanish, build a new empire somewhere else, and you could come with me. New city, new life, together." It was tempting. God, it was tempting. Amber could see it. Some foreign city, her and Tae-hyun against the world, building something new. But she'd also fought for 6 months to build a life here. Her program was helping people. Jasmine was back in her life. She was finally becoming the person she'd always wanted to be. "I can't," she whispered. "Tae-hyun, I love you, but I can't run. I just got my life back. My sister, my purpose, my sobriety, it's all here." "I know." His voice was infinitely gentle. "I've known since the moment I got the call. You're finally strong enough to stand alone. That's what I've been building toward, giving you the strength to not need me. I'll always need you. No, you'll always love me, but you don't need me anymore. You're whole now, Amber. You've become everything you were meant to be." Tears streamed down Amber's face. "What are you going to do?" Tae-hyun was quiet for a long moment. "I'm going to take the deal, testify, disappear, let you live the life you deserve without my darkness in it." "I deserve you," Amber said fiercely. "We deserve each other. Maybe in another life. He pulled her close, and they held each other as the world they'd built crumbled around them. But in this one, I'm choosing to be better, even if it costs me everything. Before we end, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Love and Tension. Comment below, have you ever had to let someone go even though you love them? Tell me about the person who changed your life but couldn't stay in it. 6 months after Tae-hyun disappeared into witness protection, Amber stood in front of her community program's new building. The ribbon-cutting ceremony had drawn a crowd. Local politicians, community leaders, former addicts whose lives had been transformed. Jasmine stood beside her, beaming with pride. "Mom would be so proud," Jasmine said softly. "Yeah," Amber agreed, her throat tight. She would. The program had expanded beyond her wildest dreams. They now offered medical care, job training, housing assistance, and therapy. Everything Amber had needed and never had. She'd helped 63 people get clean in 6 months. 63 lives saved, families restored, futures reclaimed. She'd done it without Tae-hyun's money, refusing to let his drug empire fund her redemption work. Instead, she'd gotten grants, donations from legitimate sources, and worked 3 jobs to keep it running. It was harder, exhausting, sometimes overwhelming, but it was hers, built on her strength alone. She still thought about him every day, wondered where he was, if he was safe, if he ever thought about her. The FBI agent who'd handled his case had visited once, refusing to give details, but confirming that Tae-hyun was alive and had upheld his end of the deal. 15 major operators had been indicted because of his testimony. Chicago's drug trade was in chaos, but it was also less lethal, less organized. In a strange way, he'd done more good by leaving than he ever could have by staying. "You okay?" Jasmine asked, squeezing her hand. "Yeah," Amber said, meaning it. "I really am." That night, alone in her small apartment, she'd left the penthouse the day Tae-hyun vanished. Amber stood by the window looking out at Chicago. The city glittered with possibility, with life, with futures waiting to be claimed. She was 30 months clean. She'd rebuilt her relationship with her sister. She'd created something meaningful that helped her community. She was taking classes again, working toward finishing her degree in social work. She was whole. The doorbell rang, unexpected. Amber frowned, checking the peephole, and her breath caught. A woman stood there, middle-aged, Korean, with kind eyes and an envelope in her hand. When Amber opened the door, the woman smiled gently. "Amber Mitchell? My name is Dr. Hannah Kim. I'm a friend of someone you used to know. He asked me to give you this, should you ever need it." She held out the envelope. "He also asked me to tell you something, that he's safe, that he thinks of you every day, and that watching you build your life has been the greatest privilege of his. He's proud of you." Amber took the envelope with shaking hands. Is he happy?" Dr. Kim's smile was sad. "He's alive, and he's trying to be better. I think that's all we can ask sometimes." After she left, Amber opened the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper with a phone number and a short note in Tae-hyun's precise handwriting. "For emergencies only. I promise to always protect you, even from a distance. Be strong, be brilliant, be everything you are. You saved me in that alley, Amber Mitchell. Everything good I do from now on is because of you. I love you. I always will, but you don't need me anymore, and that's exactly as it should be. T." Amber held the note to her chest, tears streaming silently. He was right. She didn't need him anymore. She'd become the strong, independent, purposeful woman she'd always been meant to be. But God, she'd always love him. She tucked the note into a box with other precious things. A photo of her mom, Jasmine's nursing school graduation announcement, letters from people she'd helped get clean, pieces of the life she'd built from rubble. Then she returned to the window, looking out at her city, her future, her life that was hers alone to shape. The cravings still came sometimes, whispers in the dark promising relief, but she was stronger than them now, stronger than her past, stronger than her pain. She was Amber Mitchell, survivor, social worker, sister, helper of those society had abandoned. She'd been destroyed and rebuilt herself from the foundation up, and she was just getting started. The city lights blurred as tears filled her eyes one last time. Not tears of grief, but of gratitude. Gratitude for the man who saved her, who loved her enough to let her go, who'd shown her that strength could bloom from the darkest soil. She was free. She was whole. She was ready for whatever came next. The story faded gently into night, leaving only the promise of dawn and a woman standing strong